Hey, welcome back to Russ Torter Garage and the $5,000 budget build 56 Chevy pickup. It has been almost 2 weeks since I've touched the truck, unfortunately. Too many other things to do. And I decided to revisit the engine and transmission LS swap wiring. So my original plan was to keep the factory 2001 engine and transmission harness. There's nothing wrong with it. And what I was going to do is just basically remove the big fuse box. I would never use that. And just add a small fuse and relay box just for the circuits I needed. And just not even pull all the extra wiring out of the harness. Just kind of cut back stuff that I didn't need, like the secondary O2s and oil level sensor, things like that. Just remove them, but not tear the whole harness to pieces, because that's just a lot of labor. And I was going to do that. That was the plan. And then I look on eBay, because I hadn't looked in a while, and I couldn't believe it. But now the LS swap harnesses have come even further down in price. I mean, now it's getting crazy. So I punted, I gave in, and I'm going to use an LS swap harness. Not even a $99 harness anymore, because now it's only $79 to my door. I mean, and that's with tax. So it's like, is it really? It's kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of another. You could spend almost as much money on just buying a small relay box and modify the factory harness. It's probably cheaper. Maybe it's $30 or $40 and you can do it. And the other reason I was going to keep the factory harness is I'm going to put air conditioning in this, and I'm going to have the PCM control the air conditioning. So I figured, why not just keep the factory harness? It already has the plugs for the compressor and everything, and just use that, because that stuff's not going to be on the standalone harness. But I figure, okay, I'll show you how to do all that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the eBay engine and transmission harness, and then I'm going to add my own wiring for the air conditioning, which really isn't a whole lot, but we'll go over it when the time comes. And we will go over, I'm going to try to do as much detail as I can of the eBay harness install into the truck. But what I'm going to do right now is go over the harness that I bought and changes I'm going to make before I put it in the truck. So first off, if you haven't seen my other videos I did on eBay harnesses, I've reviewed a few different wiring harnesses, and despite what I thought initially and what some people still think, they are not all the same, and they are not all made in the same factory. I figured they were all made in the same place and just being sold by 100 different vendors. Well, they are being sold by 100 different vendors, but they're not all the same. And basically what I found, if I can call it this, is you have the unbranded harnesses, and then I find ones that are branded JY Performance. Now, for my drive-by-wire swaps, JY Performance harness is my go-to harness for drive-by-wire. If you saw or went through my 51 Hudson build, that's a drive-by-wire car, and I used a JY harness in that car, and that worked flawlessly. And I did not have to repin anything that I remember on that harness. It was pretty much ready to go. I also used that harness on my L33 aluminum 5.3 startup, if you saw that, where I basically took a 5.3 that I bought from the junkyard, threw it on an engine stand, put a harness on it, and started it because I didn't know if the engine was any good or not. And it was also a drive-by-wire and the JY Performance harness. And I gave you the part number of that harness in there. Now, when it comes to drive-by cable, things change. So as far as drive-by cable, and again, this is all my opinion, but there are, like I said, the unbranded harnesses, and there are the JY Performance harness. Now, one thing that is for sure is that these drive-by cable harnesses are made for the 99 to 02 LS1 F bodies. At least that's what they're designed around. Now, there's an asterisk on that, because again, if you saw my video where I reviewed a third harness and second drive-by cable harness, which was one of the unbranded ones, it's what I called kind of a hybrid. And I'll explain this and try not to miss anything. And any questions, please feel free to comment. I don't know everything. This is all just based on what I've done and what I've messed with. Now, looking at all the pinouts and going over harnesses, the 99 to 02 F-body LS1 harness is not the same as a 99 to 02 drive-by cable Vortec truck harness. They are not the same. And we will go over the differences and talk about where some people say it doesn't matter, it works as is. In some cases, yes, in some cases, no, and I'll explain everything that I've found on these and why you would want to make changes. But that said, again, two different groups of harnesses. I'll call it the JY Performance harness because it's the only one I've seen that actually has a name on it. And then the unbranded harness, which is more of a hybrid. And I'll explain, again, I'll try to go over everything there. So what I have here is the JY Performance harness. And each one of these harnesses, the JY and the unbranded, they have their good points and their bad points. Neither of them are perfect out of the box. In my opinion, there are things you should change and will have to do. So it's kind of up to you which one you buy. The JY Performance harness, and again, I'm talking drive-by cable, is absolutely 100% built around the 99 to 02 LS1 prints. That means all the wires are in the positions for a 99 to 02 F-body LS1. The MAF sensor is set up for 3-pin MAF and a 2-pin IAT sensor, which is LS1. The injector connectors are EV1, that's LS1. And the alternator plug only has one wire instead of two. One wire, and that's because the LS1 alternator only has a 12-volt, I call it a start signal to it, without a reference back to the PCM. The Vortec does. So again, the difference is that's all S1. The truck harness, the truck harness has a 5-pin MAF IAT all-in-one built in, Multec or EV6 injector connectors, depending on if you have flex fuel or just a regular gas engine. And what else do we have here? The alternator is going to have the two wires because it's going to have a wire back to the PCM reading the voltage. And what I'm going to do is modify this harness to line up and be a Vortec truck harness and not an LS1 harness. And I'll explain everything I'm going to do to it and why I'm going to do it. And we'll go over it. And it's going to be, what do we got here? I have 8 things on my list that I'm going to change on this harness to make it into an a Vortec harness. And that said, here's another little thing I just noticed. I just found this in the box, I just found this in the wiring harness box. What is this? This is a second VSS connector. What's that for? That's for 4L80E. So what that means is possibly, and we'll find out, the transmission plug on this harness may not be correct for 4L60. It's yet another thing. Again, I don't think it to say these things. If you buy the harness, at least from JY, for a 4L60, or no, sorry, for a 5.3, a Vortec, and a 4L80, it's not going to be wired for the 4L80 completely. You have to add in this. This is the second speed sensor. So you will have to put these into the PCM, find the pin locations and put them in. It's not a big deal, but again, you'll have to do the work. So, okay, is that enough rambling? Let's get this harness out and see what we're going to do here. All right, let's see what we got here. And I'm working on the the dining room table because my wife's not home. So I won't get in trouble. I don't think she watches my videos. So I'm just going to, while I'm here, I just want to take a look. And yep, it's wrong. This transmission plug, I can tell just by looking at it. This is wired for 4L80, not 4L60. If you just buy this harness and plug it in without checking things, it's not going to downshift from 3 to 2. The reason being the white wire is missing, and I believe it was in pin S. I have to double check. I'm going to have to move some wires. The 4L60 versus 4L80 has the TCC lockup wire in a different position, and that 3.2 solenoid, I don't think it exists on the 80 because it's not there. But that white wire, I guarantee you, is in this trunk. And I will check the pinouts. I'm sure it's over here on the connector, and it's just taped off here. So we're gonna open that up and take a look. Yeah, so we'll get to that. So anyway, first let's talk a little bit. I've got these 8 things that I'm gonna do to this harness, and 4 things. Is it 1, 2, 3, 4? 4 things I already did because that was moving wires, and let's talk about that. Because this is a bit of, I don't want to say contention, but people don't always agree with everything. And I'm going to explain why I do stuff. Like this. The first thing I'm going to do with this harness, and again, this is based off of comparing pinouts to a truck 99 to 02 drive-by cable compared to a 99 to 02 F-body LS1, because the wires are not all in the right in the same position, and I'll explain why I'm going to move them, even if it doesn't matter, quote, to work. I want my wiring to match my hardware. I'm in my dining room right now. If a circuit breaker trips and my lights turn off, I'm going to go in the basement and I'm going to look for my dining room light circuit breaker. I'm not going to look for the bathroom outlets circuit breaker, okay? If my lights were wired to the bathroom circuit breaker, it would work. Is it right? No, because when the time comes that something goes wrong, you have to freaking troubleshoot it, and you don't want things in the wrong place. So that's why I'm going to explain the first few things I'm going to do in this harness. If you're still with me and I haven't lost you already, what we're going to do and why I'm going to do it. So, without a break now. First thing we're going to do with this harness, we're going to move the wire from blue 8 to blue 46. That wire is for the throttle position sensor 5-volt reference. The reason I'm moving it is the fact that if you have a problem with your TPS not working in the future and you pull up your Vortec prints to troubleshoot it, the wire will not be in the correct location if you don't do this. And that is what I'm talking about for the next few things here. So the first thing, the wire from blue 8 goes to blue 46. The second thing I'm going to do is move the wire from blue 48 to blue 47. That's my map sensor 5-volt reference. Again, I want the wire in the right location. If my map sensor is not reading correctly and I want to trace the wiring out, I'm not going to go look at an LS1 print because I have a Vortec engine and a Vortec computer and so on. I'm going to use my Vortec prints. I want the wire in the correct location. Now, those are both 5 volts. You're moving it from one 5-volt reference to another 5-volt. Will the car start with those wires not moved? Yes, it will. Is it right? No, it's not. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to flip-flop 2 wires. Blue 54 and blue 60. Those are both ground wires. One is for the TPS. Blue 54 is the TPS, and blue 60 is the map sensor ground. On the F body, they're flip-flopped, okay? Again, unless you know to use the LS1 prints, if you have to troubleshoot in the future, you're not going to find the wire. It's not going to be there. And if you ever sell this thing you're building to somebody in the future and tell them it's a truck engine and truck computer, they're probably going to pull the truck prints. It'd be nice to have things match. The fourth thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the wire from blue 80 to blue 63. That's the coolant temperature sensor ground. All right, so the 4 things are done as far as moving wires. We've got, well, I had 4 other things written down, but now there's going to be 5 because we have to revisit the transmission connector. So we'll come back to that. But one thing I want to address, because this trips people up as well, oxygen sensors. This harness, even though I'm putting it on an 01 engine, see this black connector? This is for case grounded oxygen sensors, okay? My original 2001 harness for the truck used reference grounded oxygen sensors, white connector. What that means is on that harness from the factory in 01, there was a wire from blue 63 that tied into the grounds on my O2 sensors, okay? It's not necessary. If you want to use white connector reference ground O2 sensors, then yes, you're going to have to add another wire in. You're going to have to basically, whereas we move the coolant temperature sensor ground to 63, you're going to have to jumper that to all the O2 sensor grounds. I'm not going to go through all that. All I have to do is use O2 sensors for a 2000 Trans Am or Z28 with the LS1. Those are case grounded O2 sensors and they will work fine. And they're a black connector, so they go right into the black plug. That's the way it is. It's an easy way to identify them. Case grounded O2 sensors were available on trucks, but they used a flat 4 black connector that I've seen and not the square. So for O2 sensors, if you're going to use this harness, I recommend 2000 Z28, and then you don't have to make any other modifications to the harness. All right, hopefully I haven't lost you. Thanks for hanging out if you are still here, or if you want to know this stuff. So anyway, the 5th thing I'm going to do here. Now, there is a power difference between the LS1 and the truck. On the truck, there's supposed to be a key on 12 volt in blue 75, okay? And it's not on this harness because this is an LS1 harness, so it doesn't have it. So when I go to blue 75, and there are 80 pins, so we'll just count back, 80, 39, 8, 7, 10. It's open, there's nothing there. So what I've done is, I have one of these connectors from the junkyard that I just cut off of a harness, and I grabbed a wire with the PCM pin on it. Where's the camera? There we go, with the PCM pin. And I'm gonna put that into blue 75, and then I'm gonna jumper it over to blue 19, which is a key on 12 volt power. And then that will supply 12 volts to this 75. Now, I have not gone through the prints to find out if 75 is necessary or not. All I can tell you is on the truck harness, and it's not on the LS1, so I'm going to add it. Now, does it help with power load or feed a circuit that is not used anymore? I can't tell you. But all I can tell you is that if it's on the truck harness, I'm adding it. It takes 5 minutes. I'm going to do it. So let me get it in there, and I'll show you how we're going to put it in. All right, so I'm just going to pop off the blue cover here. Got a little O-ring pick. You can't see that, it's my hands over it. Pop that off. Come into 80. What we got here? 79. Where's 80? 80, 79, 76, 75. Feed the wire in there like that. Good to go. Snap the cover back on. Then I'm going to strip that back and tie it over to blue 19 and solder it in. All right, and there's my blue 19, and here's my jumper wire over to blue 75. And I'm just gonna solder that connection there and tape it up. I can't put a shrink tubing on that, unfortunately, the way it is, but that will work just fine because I didn't cut the wire. I just peeled the insulation back and tied around it. Get that soldered and taped off and go to the next thing. All right, so that was the fifth thing. I had to get caught up. I had to take a break. Look, got wet. Somebody messaged me while I was doing this and said I had made an offer on a parts car. What else is new? I said, yeah, man, come get it. So I'd just go out now and get my trailer ready for the morning. And of course, this started pouring rain on me. Hasn't rained for days. Rained on me now. Whatever. Hopefully it's not raining in the morning when I got to go pick this thing up. I'll show you what it is tomorrow. Anyway, so that was the fifth thing. All right, now the sixth thing that is a problem on this harness, and I don't think it was a problem on the hybrid harness, but I'm sure it's a problem on this JY Performance harness. And that is the tack wire having 12 volts on it. As I said before in the other video, for 99-02, the F-body really did not have an individual tack wire. The cluster information is set out on serial data. And I don't know if they just didn't know what to do with the white wire, but instead of tying it to the serial data wire in the ALDL port, they tied it to the 12 volts. So, you know, I think it's pin 16 that has a white wire, and that's 12 volts on your ALDL port. And it should not be tied to your tack wire. It'll cause problems. I've read people who didn't know about that, and I can't remember if it caused a drain on their system or it was like static interference in the system. Things weren't working. Of course, the tack didn't work, but it was not good. So here, I'll just confirm it. I've got my meter here, and I thought I had a thing to hold this up. Doesn't have one. Anyway, that's my meter. So I've got one, I'm on diode check right now, or ohms, you can use whatever. I got one leg on the white wire on the underdash bundle, which is for the tack. And then I'll go to my ALDL port that I just had here, and I'll connect it to 16 white wire. If I can see what I'm doing. And sure enough, there you go. So the tack wire is connected to the 12 volt ALDL power. That's not right. So let's fix that. All right, so we got to fix this tack wire being tied into the ALDL port. What? Yeah, puppy. That's Tahani. So, last time I did this, the splice was just down the trunk on the red connector because red 10 is the tack wire, and then somewhere down here they tied it in. So I'm going to cut this open, peel some of the tape back, and see where it is. I don't remember how far down it is. And got a lot of tape on here, but I think I lucked out. I actually cut the tape right on the seam of the plastic, so that's cool. Got lucky. And go a little further back. Somewhere on this white wire, they're all tied together. Let's see. I have a puppy. Our new puppy Tahani is in the house. It's like having a toddler. She's running around like a nut. What are you doing? Playing with Six the husky. And he's like an old man. He's like, man, just let me lay down and leave me alone, and she just wants to play. Hi, buddy boy. You hear me say your name? You're a good boy. All right, so we've gotten there. So because here I see multiple white wires coming in together in this area here. So let's see. Get this tape here removed. And there's the splice right here. Let me get it out so you can see. All right, so here we go. So this is just down a few inches from the red connector in that trunk. And here we're gonna have the tack wire tied to the ALDL 12 volt wire and also tied to the 12 volt wire that's coming out of the fuse box. So we've got to split this joint here, figure out what is what, and what I want is the tack wire running straight down to the bundle under the hood and the ALDL 12 volts from the fuse box feeding directly to the ALDL connector. Get this open. All right, this is being difficult, so I'm just going to cut it. I'm going to cut these three. I'm going to try to leave a little bit of length as I can here. Let's just say I'll just cut it there. And yeah, it's a solder joint, so get the tape off of that. And we'll split these wires. So now one of these wires, obviously this is the tack output from the PCM right here off of the red connector. Then I've got three wires here. One's going to go down to the fuse box and be 12 volts. One's going to run down to the ALDL port, and one's going to run down to the tack bundle. So I need to put these together the right way. So first thing I'll do is just split the ends off of these things. And then we'll figure out what's what using the meter. And this is something, it looks like if you're buying this harness, this particular harness from JY Performance, you're going to have to do this. It must be in their prints to do this. I don't know why. All right, so first off, get a little bit more on that. A little bit more. There we go. All right, so there's my three wires. All right, so first thing I do, I turn my meter on, put it on resistance, and try to put it where you can see it. There, that works. All right, so one end, I'm just going to touch it to, where's my ALDL port? Not everything's in a pile now. I moved it all around. Where are you? Here it is. Okay. Here's my ALDL port. I'm going to put one wire on the white wire, one lead of the meter on the white wire there. And the other lead I have here. So when I touch this to the correct wire, we will get continuity. And it's not that one. And it's not that one. It's that one. Okay, so that wire runs to my ALDL port. All right, so I'll just keep that in mind. So now, let me find the tack wire, which is in the bundle here. I'm going to attach the 1 meter lead to that. And let's see who runs to the tack. That's it. Okay, so this one is tack. So this needs to connect to this guy off the PCM, red pin 10. And that is gonna, that, and I will double check again. Yep, that's it. So these guys are gonna go together. Let me cut a piece of shrink tubing and we'll put this together. All right, so I've got my red 10 tied to the wire that runs down to the bundle. Now I've got the other two ends. So one of them goes to the ALDL port and the other one comes off the fuse box right there. So these two are going to get tied together, and that will send the 12 volts from the fuse box directly to the ALDL port and nowhere else. Let me get another piece of shrink tubing cut. Get that soldered. All right, so I got my ALDL 12 volt soldered together and heat shrinked off. Now I'm just going to verify. I've got one end of my meter lead connected to the ALDL port. I'll go down to the fuse, the white wire on the fuse. And there's my continuity. Let me get a good grip on it. So I have my 12 volts direct there. And if I go to red 10, bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we are no longer connected to 12 volts, which is how it should be. Now, and of course, red 10, 1, 2, what do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I touch that to my bundle white wire. Find it. And there we go. So that's our tack output. Now, I have them tied together here, but I have not soldered them together yet. And that is because while I'm here, I'm going to take care of another problem. So it's pretty well known that the tack output signal is pretty weak on the LS, and a lot of times you have to add a keyed 12 volt through a resistor to that tack line. So kind of ironic, since we just took 12 volts off of the tack line and now we're going to attach it again. But two changes: one, it's not going to be full-time power, and two, it's going to be through a resistor, and I'm going to use a 10K resistor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach one end of the resistor to my splice here. Like that. And now just looking at this, I don't think my shrink wrap, my shrink tubing is going to work again, but we'll work. Well, maybe it will. So one end of my resistor is going to go to that splice there, and the other end is going to go to key 12 volt power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the other trunk on the blue side, split this open, and find a pink wire, because we have a pink wire that runs up to key on 12 volt for PCM, and run a jumper from that over to this resistor and run it inside the harness. So basically I'm taking care of a problem ahead of time. That's all I'm doing here. And I'll solder this and I will get a better view of it. All right, and there's the splice. That's from red 10 out of the PCM to the wire that's running down to the underdash bundle. And I've got one leg of my 10K ohm resistor just soldered into it. And then the other side we'll solder to key on 12 volts. But first I'll just shrink wrap over this and tape that side, and then we'll tie in. All right, so I've got the loom cover, plastic stuff off of the red side. I just peeled it right off. I'll tape it back on after. And now I just peeled off the blue side. So now I can find the pink wire. And this seems like a lot of work, but I'd rather do it now and make it internal to the harness than have to do it afterwards. I don't know, I just like it cleaner than that. So I have to trace these pink wires here that I have in the pile. And of course I tape them together to make them nicer, but now I'll have to untape them. But I need to find the pink wire in this loom here. And I have another piece of pink wire right here. And I'm just gonna jump her across from the blue trunk over to the red trunk and tie into the resistor. That'll give me key on power through the 10K resistor into the tack circuit. And then whatever tack I use, I will not have to worry. Some tacks don't need this to have done, some do. I've had it work, I've had it not work. I'm just saving myself the problem of having to do it in the future. So we'll get this run across and tie it in. All right, I found my B19 wire that I had spliced into to jump over to B75. It's this guy right here. So we'll put a little break in the insulation there. And get my new pink wire. And wrap this around and solder this in. And then run it over to the resistor and tape it up. And get that soldered. All right, that is all done. Got my pink wire tied in from B19, right? B19? Remember my numbers again. Yeah, B19 over to my 10K resistor, which ties into the tack circuit. Now I'm just gonna put the loom back on, tape it up, and we'll move on to the next item. All right, so that was the 6th thing to repair, the ALDL power with the power. 7th thing to fix, alternator plug. Now in the LS1, the alternator only has this red turn on wire, basically, 12-volt wire. And it should go through a resistor, but I assume that's in the PCM. Now, I used this harness on my 55 Turbo Buick, and I did not change this. And I actually did some testing, and it looked like it didn't matter. But now that the car is running and driving, I've noticed that the charging voltage is not what I think it should be, and it's actually erratic. So I could have a bad alternator, but the truck is supposed to have a second wire here. We've got the red wire here in position B. There should be a wire in position C as well, running to red pin 52. This one should go to red 15, and then C would go to red 52. Now I'm going to add that wire. Now that may be a real pain in the butt. It may be external to the whole harness, but what I'm going to do is cut this open, because one person commented and said they cut this back and they found a gray wire in here. Now, if I get lucky and it's a gray wire running down to the bundle, you know, I can trace that and bring it over to the PCM a little easier than running a new wire. And the other thing is, without a pin, you can't use this connector, obviously. So I went to the junkyard and I got a connector. So I have one. Where is it? Right here. If I can get this piece of tape off my hand. This is off of a 2000, 2002, around there. And you see it has 2 wires on it, not just one. So the one wire, the B, will splice into this existing red wire. And then this second wire in C, I'll run back to the PCM in red 52. But first, let me cut this back and see if there really is a wire in here and I can use it. Sure enough, check it out. Just a few inches down the trunk, there's a gray wire in here along with the red. Now, I gotta see where it goes and see if I can use it. All right, confirmed. This gray wire in the alternator plug, alternator line, is this gray wire that goes down into the underdash bundle, which is strange because the gray and the, what is there? There's one other one. There's two wires here that, yeah, there's a pink one here, that are supposedly F-body only and not needed. So they're, when you buy the harness, they're not used. But obviously, they're not quite what I thought they were, because one should have been for oil pressure and one should have been for coolant temp for the gauges, because, and only really a 98 because the 99 up uses serial data. But regardless, I can use this gray wire. I'm going to trace it back, and I need to get it run over to red 52, as long as I can find it. And maybe I can even cut it back somewhere in the loom and get it over there. But let me see if I can find it, and we'll go from there. All right, so the trunk of wires that would go under the dash come out right here. And once again, double confirm that the gray wire here is running up to the alternator. And I also checked, there's a few other gray wires at the PCM. I made sure it's not connected to that, because who knows if it was spliced somewhere. But it looks like it's just a direct run. So I can cut the loom open and run that wire through the existing loom to the red connector, which is here. And so up here, up through this, and get to red 52. I got to go get another pin, another wire with a pin, gray preferably, and get that tied in. All right, and there is the gray wire spliced into red 52. And that is it for the alternator. Put the loom back on, tape it up. All right, so the next to the last thing, would have been the last thing except for the transmission plug needing to be fixed, is to convert the 3-wire MAF and 2-wire IAT to a 5-wire. So I'll give you the JY colors and what they should go to on the factory GM colors, because they won't be the same. All right, so here we go to convert the 3-wire MAF plus a 2-wire IAT to a 5-wire combined. And actually the JY harness has all the correct GM colors except for one. But GM changed colors as well when they went to the 5. So some are the same, some are different. So on the 3-wire MAF, and here's a 5-wire MAF and IAT combo, the yellow on the 3-wire MAF would go to the yellow on the 5. The black middle wire on the 3-wire IAT, that is a chassis ground, that will go to black and white on the 5-wire MAF. And the pink wire, which is the 12 volts, would go to the pink wire on the 5-wire MAF. Now the 2-wire IAT, the purple wire, which is the low reference, will actually go to the straight black wire on the 5-wire MAF and IAT. And then this pink wire here really should have been tan, but it isn't. But that second wire there is the signal wire, and that is going to go to what's left, the tan wire on the 5-wire MAF IAT. So hopefully that was clear. And I traced them all back to the PCM. They're all in the right locations. So I'm going to extend these wires right now. I'm not going to put this on because I don't know where my MAF sensor is going to be. So I'm going to tie these two together with some wires and make a 5-wire pigtail, and that'll tie to this later. And I have a bunch of wire cut off of another old GM harness, so I'm going to make everything the correct colors for the 5-wire. So when the time comes to splice in the connector, everything will line up. All right, that's it for now for my MAF wiring. I just made it as a pigtail, and I'll splice into the connector later. Now, for the transmission. I'm looking at this from the wrong side. This is the back, but if you look at any diagram, it'll be looking at it from the front. But I know where the wires are. And basically what I see here is this right here is pin S, this brown wire. That shouldn't be there. That should be over here in the U position, and there should be a white wire here in the S position. I'm going to cut open this here, and I bet we find the white wire. So right now this harness is really wired for a 4L80, which is wrong. And I know I ordered a harness for the 4L60. So this is something else that needs to be fixed. And I had somebody comment quite a while ago on the video when I reviewed this harness, and they had the same problem. I thought I ordered an 80 harness because I was doing the turbo car, and I was thinking ahead, and in case I was going to need to put a 4L80 in it, I ordered an 80 harness. But the person said, no, I ordered a 60 harness, and this is how it was. And now I've confirmed it, so this is wrong. And there it is. Here's the white wire taped off in here. And if it's like my last one, it has a pin on it and everything. It's ready to install. There it is. Look at that. So they're shipping out harnesses, you know, sold for the 4L60, but this is wired for 4L80. So now this white wire has to go in pin S, and then I need to move the brown wire down to U, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. And I just took my razor knife and just lifted up on this. I realized maybe not everybody's done this. This little piece here snaps right into the connector and holds the pins in place. Once that's out of the way, you can get the pins out. So we're going to get S, the wire that's in S, this brown wire, doesn't belong here. Pull that right out of there. I'm going to move it over to U position until that fit snaps in there. And then the white one, slide into the S position. Why they do this, I don't know. They obviously have making a mistake in their factory, because this is not wired for a 60 with the way it came. And then the connector will just snap back in like that. And now when I look at the back of it, here, I'll turn the phone around so you can see what it looks like. All right, so that's how it should be. The white wire in the S and the brown wire down here in the U position, and that's the S position there. Now it's wired for the 4L60, and it should work. All right, so I guess that's it. Long video. I hope I didn't lose you all. Let's just do a quick review, and we'll go over details maybe on a couple of these things. First off, one other reason that I like these harnesses is I didn't want my PCM in the engine compartment. If I had used a factory harness with the fuse box, the PCM would have been the engine compartment. Whatever, I just think it's cleaner under the dash. If you buy one of these harnesses, either the JY Performance or the other one that's unbranded, do not put your PCM in the engine compartment. These are not weather tight. If you look at them, anywhere there's not a wire, it's an open hole right to your pin on your PCM. Same thing with this fuse box. This is not weather tight. Don't put this stuff in the engine compartment. I don't care if you don't live where there's snow. If you live where there's rain, moisture can get in this and ruin everything. So if you see somebody putting this in the engine compartment, don't copy them. That's all I got to say. So with that said, we have these 9 things that were now done to this harness, and now I consider it ready to use. The first 4 were moving wires around. That's because I'm putting this on a truck engine with a truck PCM and a truck tune. PCM doesn't matter, but the truck tune, truck hardware, truck alternator, I want things to line up and match. That 5th thing, adding the key on power to B75, I do that because the truck harness had it and the LS1 did not. I do not know what circuits that powers. If it matters or not, I don't know, honestly, but I add it because I believe it should be there. The 6th thing was fixing the ALDL power being tied to the tack wire. I think that's important. Whether you do that resistor mod or not, you should still separate those wires disconnected from your 12-volt hot to your ALDL port. Get that fixed. The 7th thing was the F terminal on the alternator. The reason I do that is because the truck alternator uses 2 wires. The LS1 did not. This was made for LS1. If you're putting this on an LS1 engine, you really don't need to change that. But because I'm using the truck alternator, and based on the fact that I didn't add that 2nd wire on the Buick, and I don't think the charging voltage is correct, it's erratic, and I have never seen it really get to 14 volts. I'm adding the 2nd wire on this one, and I want to see how it does. The 8th thing was converting the 3-wire MAF and 2-wire IAT to a 5-wire combined. Now, you don't have to do it the way I did it. You can buy an adapter harness for 20 bucks that plugs into the 3 and the 2 and gives you a 5. If you want to do that, that's fine. I don't mind wiring. Actually, I like doing wiring. And for me to just, solder some wires on there and get a junkyard connector, it cost me a couple bucks. I can't spend $20 on a connector, but I don't mind doing it this way. And then when the time comes, I'll shorten these to wherever the MAF sensor is going to be and solder the 5-pin connector on there. And then the last thing, that's the transmission plug. Now that's a total screw up because now this is multiple harnesses that have come this way, including somebody else who commented on my channel and said they had the same problem. Where they bought a 60 harness, their engine wouldn't downshift from 3 to 2, and they saw my video and they figured it out, and that's what fixed it. And that's that white wire. That's that 3-2 downshift solenoid. Why they're shipping this out like this, I don't know. But it just shows you really need to check these things. Will I try one of the other hybrid harnesses again? I don't know. I haven't installed one on the engine yet. I just didn't like the way they felt. It just seemed kind of even cheesy for a cheap harness, but they may be fine. I don't remember if they had this problem with the transmission, but I will say for drive-by wire, the JY harness is the one I will always use. For drive-by cable, well, I have a few of these already in the box. So this is what I'll have to do to every one, in my mind, to make them work. The only thing that's left to do will add the adapters for the fuel injectors, which is no big deal. I like those. They fit right in there, and they're not ugly. They're fine. So, and this harness, if you want to run an 80E, well, they give you the 2nd speed sensor, and it's already wired for an 80E. But if you're running a 4L60, you better check this plug or you're not going to be downshifting. So keep that in mind. So I hope that was helpful. This harness will be used on the 56 truck. When we install it, I will go over all of this. And here we have fan 1, fan 2 trigger. We have, let's see, I don't remember where that one is. I don't think that's used. That's a park signal into the PCM. Is really not needed. That's service engine light. That's VSS, and that is for TCC lockup, and that is for tack. So I think this is one of those 2 wires that are not used in a harness. I bet this goes somewhere in there, but I don't know where. It's not needed. We won't need it. So when I install this harness in the truck, I will go over in detail installation of all this and this whole harness. To honey. So that'll be it for this harness and this video. I hope this was helpful. If there's anything I missed, I'm sure I missed something, but I think it's pretty much should be plug and play now. There should be no more surprises. Heard that before. And everything should go right in as I want it to go in. I guess that's about it. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for following the 56 Chevy truck build. And the next video, we'll be out in the garage working on it. See ya.